Hello, folks. We're here to do episode 36. We're going to discuss the Trump Epstein pedophile cover-ups and implied threat. I guess this is one of the topics that Trump doesn't want anyone discussing, and for good reason. So I'll let you take it from there, Cal.
One of the more surprising things to me, anyways, is how many people seem to have hung themselves on associated with Epstein. For example, there's Epstein himself. There's the main accuser who died by suicide down in Australia. And then there's a guy named Brunel who kind of slipped between the covers, so to speak, hanging himself sometime in 2022. He was held at the time in a French prison, having been arrested December 2020. So they held him for 2 years before he hung himself. And you have to ask yourself, is French justice that slow that when you bring charges against somebody, it
There's
takes
more
two
to this
years?
story than that because it's an international involvement, and it looks like an international cover-up for wealthy oligarchs and wealthy people. I think there was an article where Epstein was interviewed and he feared for his life upon his arrest, that it would happen like that Brunel, that he would be offed in the jail system. And lo and behold, he was offed.
Well, there
According
was
to the three minutes missing from the video, we're not sure what happened there, but I think further research needs to be done into that.
there was a story that Epstein was making regular payments to somebody at the jail, and they think what he was doing was buying protection.
Oh, I never heard that, but it would make sense. If I had money, I'd be paying for lots of protection.
And it seems counterintuitive that you'd be paying for protection if you were going to commit suicide.
Yeah, true. That's kind of a crazy reality that needs further investigation.
Well, one of the other odd things is back when the news initially came out, they claimed that two of the guards had fallen asleep and that
Yeah.
they had doctored the rounds, the book where they keep the rounds, stating that they'd actually looked in his jail cell on several occasions. One of the guards has been charged because of that. But when you see the tape, it doesn't look like anybody's sleeping anywhere. If you see the front desk, there's people up walking
Yeah.
around. So you have to wonder, were the first reports intentionally misleading and false? And as the story progresses, it gets worse and worse. You have to wonder, what are they covering up? It's either a horrible clown show, or these people just are pawns in a huge game. And when you look at what would the game be, you have to ask yourself, what did Epstein do to make his money? How does a school teacher become a billionaire?
Yeah,
And
that's kind of a multifaceted question that seems to be everybody wanting to cover up these ties. When you start digging into it, you start bringing up the name of Deutsche Bank. And there's lots of articles showing that this bank was used by Epstein and provided preferential treatment to Trump. So there's a definite link between Trump being able to bail himself out of bankruptcies and his dealings and associations with Epstein. And the FBI reports would have all the transaction records of all these bank accounts and where did the money go? And that boils down to just recently, one of the senators, I believe, made a statement to the press that follow the money.
actually, it was the Committee on Finance, and it was the Democratic senator that made the letter. Sorry, that sent the letter to Bondi
And there's the
requesting,
letter.
yeah, requesting assistance in the investigation as to following the money. And the reason these things become important is because we're talking hundreds of millions and up to billions of dollars of money that was floating around from different countries, including Estonia, Russia, Cyprus. And you have to wonder, where where did the money come from? Where did the money go?
We know that Trump name would be all over some of this. And Trump, during this period of time, was traveling to Russia to meet with Putin. And that leads to some real questions too. I mean, it's always been implied that there's involvement, but how? And I think if you, like this letter spells it out, follow the money. It's very clear. And if the DOJ was doing its job, those records would already be confiscated from the banks, and that would be due process of an investigation. And I can see why Trump doesn't want these documents of the FBI ever to be released, which goes back to another question. What was that $75 million or payment to the victims of Epstein's by the bank?
Well, before you go into that, you still have the letter up.
Yeah.
You can see that they're talking about 4,700 wire transfers of $1 billion going back and forth, naming
Which
names.
point is that?
Number 1 on page 2.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
They name the names. They contain the details of Wall Street financiers, including 170 million from Leon Black paid to Epstein for purported tax and estate planning advice. Like that, that's outrageous. The documents that are being requested here obviously are being requested to try to follow the money. Where did the money go? Who got the money? Whose money was it? And what was the money used for? Was it used in part of the sex trafficking? Was it generated by the sex trafficking? Was it, money laundering from the sale of real estate in Manhattan? And what has it got to do with Trump? Like somewhere along here, there's Trump's fingerprints.
There's a lot of money funneled into Trump towers, like the Soho Tower was a guy named Aroff or something like that. And he was later implicated and charged with prostitution ring operating off a yacht in, can't remember where, but just give me a second. I'll figure it out. In Turkey is where it was. And he had lots of ties to Donald Trump. In 2010, I think he was charged, and there's pictures of Trump and Ivanka with this Arab in 2007. And he had underage prostitutes, girls, on the boat at the time of the raid, and they were charging $3,000 to $10,000 an encounter with these young girls and stuff. So there had to be ways of laundering the payments for these prostitution rings, and they were also providing women from Russia. And in the Epstein files, there are documents in the Deutsche Bank apparently where he's paying for these women in Russia, which leads you back to, are they payments for covering up Trump's actions in Russia? They could be. We don't know why the payments to these Russian women are. And that leads to another question is, what does Putin have over Trump? And I think the money trail tells it all.
Well, here you have an example, the money that Leon Black paid, the 150 million. A lot of it apparently went to finance the Virgin Island operation of Epstein. So you have to wonder, is it a secret payment that can be collected later? In other words, the money is moved offshore and parked in a tax haven type of jurisdiction where no one knows what it is and where it came from, that you can subsequently go and get a piece of. But Black made a settlement and in 2023 and paid $62.5 million in order to receive immunity from any criminal prosecution in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So you got to look at that and go, why would this gentleman be paying that kind of money to avoid prosecution? And why would the U.S. Virgin Islands accept money not to prosecute somebody for the crimes that Epstein has been accused of? They're buying justice, basically, or buying injustice.
Well, we know that. I mean, look at what's going on in the U.S. with Trump. I mean, it's buying justice. But another thing, this Arab that was caught doing this prostitution ring, he was the one that founded Bayrock, which had direct association with Trump in building Soho Towers and another Trump Towers that went bankrupt or went under, and with allegations of fraud. And that, why would somebody deal with a guy that's gone bankrupt in so many times in real estate deals? You have to look at it and go, there has to be more to handing money over to a guy that's going to go bankrupt than just doing a business deal that you know is going to fail. So that brings up the question of money laundering, or is there involvement in the sex circles, or what would bring a legitimate business person to the table? Nothing. You couldn't get a legitimate business person to do a Trump Towers in the 90s because of the bankruptcies and affiliations and everything with Russia and all these nefarious people. So the people that are being surrounding of Trump and his business deals were questionable people to begin with. So that's why I think it's follow the money, and rightly so, because a legitimate business person, I don't think would be involved in those type of transactions. Which brings up another issue as to the falling out of Epstein and Trump. It was over a land deal, a mansion that Epstein had told Trump about, believing that Trump was broke. And Epstein seems to likely to know if Trump had money or not, because there seems to be an association between the bank, Deutsche Bank, and all of a sudden Trump outbids him on that and caused a rift in the relationship. And later, Trump doubles his money by selling it to a Russian oligarch. And I do believe there may have been sanctions on dealings with some of these oligarchs, but I'm not sure. But it does seem nefarious. And who would know more of Trump's business transaction than Epstein himself? So again, it's follow the money. And there's too many coincidences involved here not to be a real link between Epstein, Trump, and all these sex trafficking people that are money backers of the Trump buildings and real estate world.
If you look at the Deutsche Bank agreeing to pay $75 million in an out-of-court settlement in a lawsuit originating in the US, where victims were claiming that the bank had some obligation to know where Epstein's money was coming from and the bank had somehow benefited from Epstein's business that somehow generated income off of these ladies. It's astounding to me that a bank would be held liable for what one of its customers were doing unless there was more to the story than this.
Yeah.
And there has to be before the bank would settle. Like I can't even imagine a lawyer having the gall to sue the bank for what the bank's client did in the way of either rape or drugging women. It seems like too big a stretch. Where's the liability?
Yeah, the follow the money. I mean, that they were making payments through those accounts, so it seems somebody in the bank knew what was going on, and that's the only reason you'd pay, is to hide the connections to the transactions.
They don't want an investigation. They're prepared to pay not to have an investigation, which again is a way in which people get around what the law is supposed to stand for, which is justice. But I guess as long as the victims got paid, then perhaps
they turn a blind eye to justice. They feel that money is a compensation tool to justice, but that's not reality. I mean, money can make your life a little better, I guess, after you've been victimized, but it's nothing more than a method of silencing individuals. And that silencing of individuals is costing society its justice system and the core of what we stand for. as a democracy is to have a justice system so it's equal to all. That is not what's going on here, folks. It's the wealthy have a two-tier justice system. We would be in jail if we did anything near what they're doing, and because we don't have the money, we can't buy the justice system. So this has to stop on all levels. I mean, it's appalling that money can buy your way around the justice system.
The Deutsche Bank also paid 150 million in penalties to the U.S. for to settle charges by the New York state regulator that the bank had significant compliance failures in its relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, it goes to why would Donald Trump be getting preferential treatment at Deutsche Bank for loans? Apparently borrowed up to $2 billion, and a lot of that money was never repaid to the bank. So there had to be some system of making it lucrative for the bank to do these transactions, which they knew were in contravention of banking laws and international banking laws to boot. So I guess that letter from the senator comes into play, follow the money, and that will reveal everything. And I do think that's why Trump is really afraid of releasing the Epstein files, because the banking transactions are part of that, and that's black and white. And black and white is really hard to paint with propaganda and lies because it's black and white. So Trump and his lies would have a hard time distracting and gaslighting those transactions, would be my guess. And there would be no way of dealing with it. And then on top of that, I'm pretty sure in the files, the minute the money laundering starts being exposed in contravention of international laws, it might piss off some of the people that actually do have documents and files that are incriminating. So that might be another reason Trump doesn't want the Epstein files released.
Also, there's something that needs to be sorted out too, because apparently JP Morgan did up to $2 trillion in shady deals, which is essentially money laundering. But they're claiming that it's just a fishing expedition, that, you know, there's no evidence that they've done anything wrong.
Well, there's good news. There's good news for the banking industry. Now all they have to use is cryptocurrency to launder money, and there's no transactions or records of it. They just got to wash it at the bank and say, oh, I bought the crypto coins when it first come out, and therefore I'm rich. And, you know, they might have to pay a bit of capital gains, but that's pretty good money laundering.
The other banks involved were something called Danske Bank of Estonia and FBME Bank, which apparently was at one time registered in Cyprus. Yeah. And the Cyprus is well known as a money laundering center. It has undisclosed operators of companies. It doesn't disclose banking information. So it's perfect. Estonia could have been a place that was abused. The Danske Bank apparently was bought by a Dutch company. The Dutch company didn't properly integrate the branch into its operation and had no control, they say, over what was going on in that bank. And money was flowing through back and forth from Russia, from Estonia, from America, from Cyprus, and they were laundering a lot of money. And
the question I have, are any of these countries sanctioned by Trump?
I don't know.
Yeah, that would be an interesting question to be answered.
They let Estonia.
If they're benefiting Trump, they won't be sanctioned. I guarantee you they're not probably sanctioned. But the audience, let us know. Do your own research on that one. I mean, there's a definite link that if they're not sanctioned and he sanctioned every other country in the world, might tell you something.
Well, Corey, the U.S. Treasury Department paid $50 million to Estonia in thank you for the investigation in the money laundering. Now, the the interesting thing is they paid out of their pocket to say thank you for helping us with this investigation, but I can't find any results of the investigation.
Yeah.
So it sounds like another point where money was paid and documents have been buried. Why would you give them $50 million? Well, they haven't said a word about what the investigation found.
Right.
Coincidence?
Yeah. Not
Shut it.
likely.
It's hush money, more hush money.
Yeah.
Like the amount of hush money that follows Epstein around is unbelievable.
And that's probably why the files were never disclosed. And I'm sure they have enough evidence to charge a lot of these wealthy people. And they're not charging them because wealth is paid for a cover up and silencing. Now that brings me back to, is Trump an agent for Putin? All the actions he's taken against Ukraine and international stage seem to indicate that Putin does have something on him. And then all of a sudden, just before the big meeting, there's a ex-KGB agent, a boss, Musayev from Kazakhstan, I believe. Let me check this out. Ex-KGB boss says Putin has videos and documents that could destroy Trump. And that was released a couple days ago. And Elner Musayev, ex-head of Kazakhstan State Security Services, claims Vladimir Putin holds compromising documents and recordings targeting Donald Trump. The alleged material includes evidence of sexual crimes against minors and financial dealings tied to Russia, Kazakhstan, and other ex-Soviet states. Musayev's accusations surfaced just days before Trump and Putin are set to meet in Alaska to discuss the Ukraine war. Now, if anybody would know, it'd be an ex-KGB agent. Releasing this may be coordinated with Putin, because if it wasn't coordinated with Putin, this agent would miraculously fly out a window, and that would be the end of it. So in the underlying motives of why come out before the meeting, it was a message maybe to Trump that Putin has the goods on him, he'll do as Putin says. And then why would you have a private meeting in the back seat of the car on the way to the meeting where only Putin and Trump are? And you got to remember, Putin is fluent in English. So they had a conversation, and Putin was all happy and smiles, and so was Trump after that. So there's, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but when the writing's on the wall, you do have to look at what it's saying to you. And there's so much going on here. I do believe Trump is an agent of Putin. There's too much linking him to that in transaction with Russian oligarchs. And this Epstein file and FBI reports would probably make it very clear to the U.S. people the ties and associations. So back to this Musayev, he also says that the article reads, the former KGB official claims Trump could act to divide NATO and the European Union under Kremlin influence. And that I do believe. And this agent also goes on to state that he points to the controlled leaks from the FSB as a tactic to keep Trump in line with Moscow's goals. So now that has to be further investigated by the FBI, I would imagine. And this agent has made it public. And why isn't it in the news is my question. Why isn't something this significant being brought forward so people can ask, why isn't the FBI investigating?
There's been suspicions about Trump and the KGB going back at least
to his bailouts.
Yeah, to 2020s. The Guardian wrote a piece saying that Trump was a perfect target for Russian cultivation as an asset. You never know.
Well, I mean, look at the mass abductions in the streets all across the U.S. I mean, obviously it's trying to be gaslighting and a distraction to all the other things going on that Trump's doing. But you got to see this Midas Touch article put out today that shows all these abuse and muggings by so-called agents, and they won't even divulge their badge number, their face. It's really going on, and that's the methods that Putin uses over in Russia. And I think that's why Putin and Trump were smiling and laughing when they met, because that might be the game plan, is the civil unrest that Putin wants in the U.S., and he's getting it. So I don't know. Time will tell what's going on, but sure seems to be a lot of Russian involvement in the finances of Mr. Trump and his empire.
If I was that ex-KGB agent, I'd be worried about falling out of the locked fourth floor window of a psych unit.
Well, I mean, look at all the people that disappear involved with Epstein. Suicides. You know, it's after a while, it's not coincidence. You have to start looking at this. There's something else at play. I mean, Maxwell has got to be afraid, and rightly so, that something could happen to her if she doesn't toe the line with Trump. And that's another issue, is Trump's afraid of what she can say. That's why he sent his guys in. He doesn't want her saying anything other than what she's been scripted. And her cellmates in her last institution said she had approached Biden and had information to bury Trump. And I believe she does. I mean, if anybody does, she does. But being a sex offender and liar, Biden wasn't going to have anything to do with that. But that doesn't mean that the testimony that she can provide might be truthful and backed with evidence and documents. Trump is worried, and he doesn't want her testimony or Epstein's testimony or documents ever to come out in the U.S. And that should lead you to worry that she does have the goods on Trump. There's no reason to give a sex offender privilege at a resort prison that, you know, is only reserved for the best of the minor clients or minor crimes. It's appalling. And the U.S. has sent a message to the rest of the world: you can never be trusted. Your legal system is only for the wealthy, and you are no better than the Russian oligarch system. So beware, U.S. You are on a path to self-destruction, I guess, is the word I'm looking for.
When you can pick people up off the street with unidentified officers, you don't know who they belong to, who sent them, what their names are. You can't see their faces. They aren't wearing any badges.
I mean, up
no
here in
ID.
Canada, if that happened in front of me, I would think it's a mugging or abduction going on. I'd be running in there cracking heads. If you're not identifying yourself and you got a mask on and you're mugging somebody on the street, I'm a redneck. I'm running in there. So I don't understand why in the States, where everybody carries a gun, if you're masked and you're abducting people and you're not producing a badge, why aren't they shooting these people right in the head? They got vests on, just shoot them in the head. They're done. So I don't understand what's going on down in the States. They kill people every day on the streets, and these people are abducting with masks and not identifying themselves, and they're not bearing arms to defend themselves. Isn't that what the U.S. Constitution stands for? You have the right to defend yourself or any wrong or criminal act going on in front of you. So there's another hypocrisy. And at what stage do you call that a revolution or a revolt? Or why would California ever want to be in a country like the U.S. is defined now? Like, why aren't you making moves to separate? you're never going to gain any reputation back unless you do separate. So I have, it just befounds me, like I have no idea why this is allowed in the streets of US. It would never be allowed in Canada. Never would I not step in a mugging. Like this is, I really don't understand these gun-toting American mentality. Sorry,
Well,
folks, but
the guys that were doing the arresting had bigger guns.
I don't believe in that theory. 22 well placed is just as good as a single shot is just as good as a machine gun. I grew up around guns all my life, so I don't understand this mugging on the streets and why it's being allowed. If you ask for identification of a police officer, shouldn't that be provided? Or it's a mugging, and you're obligated to stop any mugging. I mean, turning a blind eye to a crime is not justifiable in my stance on the legal system, but I guess the US has no legal system. And please don't bring that bullshit up here to Canada. And Maggie Smith better not bring that bullshit to Alberta, because that is not going to be tolerated by redneck motherfuckers like me, I guarantee you. But then again, I'll be dead, so adios, amigos.
You may find yourself on the wrong end of that one.
Probably, but I mean, no law-abiding citizen would ever tolerate that if you call yourself a participant of a democracy. So we know right now, US, you are not a democracy. You are a oligarch run, I don't even know what you call it. Fascist regime is all I can think of. You got a better term for it?
It's going downhill fast.
Yeah, downhill in a handbasket, and I can't see anything but murder and unrest in the streets, and that's what Trump wants. He wants total chaos so that he's never implicated in the Epstein files. It's a major distraction, folks, and he's using your lives and well-being as a distraction so that he can milk you for as much money and never go to prison and never be held account to all the crimes he's involved with and all his associates are involved with. So, hopefully this resolves itself. I don't even see why the Senate bringing a war criminal to the U.S. soil, that should be enough grounds to be impeached right there. I have no idea why you're allowing him to run your country.
First of all, the Americans aren't signatories to the Court of Justice, so they don't care. And they have a law that says anybody that tries to enforce a court order against one of their citizens can be invaded. So it's pretty safe for Putin to go to the U.S.
Yeah, that's pretty pathetic. So it shows you that the U.S. is a corrupt country, and now you've been defined. You'll have a hard time regaining that reputation on a world stage, and I think the world is going to quietly quit you, and we really don't need a bully on the block, and I think the free world can have a strong economy without the rapists and pillagers of the U.S. Because let's face it, the U.S. goes into countries, rapes and pillages all their assets, takes all the profits out of the country instead of reinvesting in the country to build it up to an economic powerhouse. Canada is a good example of that, but there's many other countries around the world where that's the motive of the oligarchs and the rich in the U.S. is to rape and pillage all other countries. And that now is forefront in the world politics, and we see it. You are corrupt, U.S., corrupt to the bone. And you're not going to change that without radical major changes. And let's see what those changes are. If you're going for status quo, we already know what you are. So that's my take on the Epstein issue. Release the files, Trump, you coward. Or are you a criminal? hey, we already know you're a felon, so it's not a far stretch that there are evidence in there, you are implicated, and you, the U.S., have been weighed, measured, and found wanting for allowing this felon to run your country and not release crimes against children and protecting crimes against children, protecting the people that are doing it, says all we need to know about you, U.S.
But the thing is too, if you look at crimes against children, the supplying of weapons to Israel is the
Yeah.
biggest crime against children when you're dropping 500-pound bombs on, people that you've run out of their homes, destroyed their homes, and are vaporizing them now in streets and in front of hospitals. That's even a bigger crime.
Yeah, and
And
it's going on. Nobody gives a crap. I mean, look at the views we have on our podcast where we talk about Gaza and the crime. They're a tenth of what the views are on any other topic, and that's pathetic, folks.
well,
I have
yes,
no rational thought as to why you're not concerned that these people that are alleged involved in pedophilia cover-up are bombing kids and innocent women and people in Gaza, and you're turning a blind eye to the pedophile case in the States. Release them damn files on Epstein and let the boulders drop on those that are involved in it and deal with it. And you'll probably find that Trump is all over that file. Oh, we already know he's all over the file. The money trails, the associations, the everything points that he's in there up to his eyeballs with it. And if I was him and I wasn't involved, I would be releasing those files. They would have been released under my first term, not my second term, and trying to cover up the release of them. He's in there up to his neck in it, probably up over his eyeballs, and he knows it. He knows it, folks. I mean, you don't run a kids pageant and walk in bragging that you're seeing these young girls in their nude and bragging that, geez, I have a limit. 12 years old would be my limit. You know this guy is a pervert. He's announced it publicly on TV, and he knows that his money buys him out from under anything of his conduct. And that's why you got 25 cases where he's got non-disclosure agreements. And why aren't those women with allegations of sexual abuse by Trump brought to a grand jury to prove to the citizens of the U.S. that they're liars? That's what, if Trump had nothing to do with these sexual assaults, bring them to a grand jury and have them state that they lied or whatever. But no, they've got non-disclosure agreements, which really aren't valid because you can't cover up crimes with a non-disclosure agreement. And if truly Trump wasn't involved, he would have already brought them to a grand jury, which he controls, and there would be silencing of these allegations against him. So, okay, Trump, hold a grand jury, bring in these 26 women, children that have made allegations against you, and prove that those allegations are wrong. The grand jury can do that.
well, yesterday we were talking about the Rubio.
Yes.
We were talking about the fact that he is trying to stop Cuba from sending doctors to second world countries.
Yeah.
Well, yesterday he made a statement that they will not be allowing any children from Gaza into the U.S. So
Whoa.
they're bombing the crap out of them. Now. Apparently, somebody reported that had happened, and some influencer made a post that said, "Why are we allowing Muslim children to come into the U.S. and how does that keep America great, America first?" Now, the Rube immediately put out an order stopping anybody from bringing children in from Gaza. Now, these children are homeless. A lot of
Orphans,
them,
probably.
yeah, orphans and wounded.
Yeah.
And they're in that condition because you allowed it to happen. And he's now cutting that off. So I'll try to find out who the person was.
There was an influencer, Midas Touch thing today showed an influencer being dragged from her car by ICE agents, and I don't know, she was unconscious on the street and people were trying to intervene and they had to call 911 and haul her to a hospital. And she was brutally beaten on the streets by ICE to send a message to all influencers, this could be you next. And that is the state of affairs in the US. So be careful, influencers. Sorry about the interjection on your Gaza information, but
Well, it's just more of the same.
yes.
Like it's more of the same. The concept of law, order, and justice has now gone.
Canada's the same. We follow the US system. And I'm sure we can get into lots of articles. We have the proof of some of the injustices and stuff in the legal system in Canada, and hopefully we'll get to be able to introduce some of them with our bag lady and our bag man bringing out the evidence, because they're the insiders that have the information. Although I have witnessed a lot in the courts myself and will divulge some of these findings to the viewers, you have to watch for this. I mean, we're only 36 episodes in, and we're going to be starting to release more information like the Battle River contamination, where mercury and poisons are still leaching into the Battle River system. We have lots of articles and information on the justice system and politicians and politics. And any of you people that have inside stories but don't want to get outed, we would love to hear from you, and we will try to cover your stories on our podcast. So please contact us.
The connection that I want to get back to, though, on Rubio, is he was preventing or trying to prevent the export of doctors from Cuba to second world countries. The State Department in the US now is halting the humanitarian visas for children that were injured in Gaza. So Rubio is showing himself to be a monster. Why would you ever stop the treatment of children anywhere in the world, let alone the US, the richest country in the world? And the American people would not have been paying for this. The public, it's humanitarian groups that are setting this up.
Yeah,
So
well, they also stopped the $8 billion in humanitarian aid around the world and prevented the distribution of food at ports that could have helped starving kids around the world. They've caused thousands and thousands of unnecessary deaths. But what it is it's just a distraction for Trump. And he's ordered, you give me all the distractions you can to cover up his involvement in the Epstein file and the non-release of the incriminating evidence. And that's what it's about, folks. It's just a cover-up ruse, and they're flooding the airwaves with anything that can get them more attention than the Epstein file. And I don't think there's anything more important than disclosing the Epstein files and uncovering the truths involved there. And that's my take.
So the person that Rubio is indebted to, or indentured to is probably a better word, is somebody named Laura Loomer. Now, Laura Loomer is an American far-right political activist, conspiracy theorist, and internet personality, apparently. So she put out a tweet on social media asking how this could be happening, and that the Trump administration needs to shut this down. Immediately, Rubio jumps right on it, and I look at that and I'm thinking, what do these people have on Rubio? Like, how can?
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be their modus operandi, is having things on people and getting them to do what they want.
I just don't understand this. It's beyond me that somebody can post a tweet and critically injured children are now denied access to medical treatment. It's
Well,
absolutely
why
beyond.
why would you want to sanction countries that have 30,000 doctors helping kids, families, the sick, the injured, and you make the allegation that it's a scam? No, these people, these doctors are there following their Hippocratic oath, offering services. I guess I can see the U.S. point is money first, human rights zero, and you can see the way they're treating their citizens in the U.S. If you're not money, you're just a piece of shit, and you can be pissed on however you want because you got no money, you got no say, you got no voice. And then they go around, and if you do try to get a voice as a social influencer, we'll just send thugs out and beat the shit out of you and leave you dying on the streets. So yeah, there's a lot to this.
But the woman who stopped this, who that Rubio is listening to, obviously, she's one of these people that alleged the mass shootings, including the 2018 shooting at Stoneman High School, were staged,
Yeah.
and actors were used.
The only stage shooting was shooting Trump's ear,
But
unfortunately.
so here you have somebody that's right off the wall, and whatever they want, this one single person apparently wants, Rubio jumps in and does it. And it would be a good idea to follow the money there as well, to find out who's paying her way, and what
Well,
money is she spreading around.
yeah, it boils back down to all these money people buying the system in the U.S. right now, and that has to change.
You only need civil rights if you don't have money, apparently.
Yep,
That's
that's it.
that's the bottom line.
Bottom line. So I think we beat this topic pretty good. I'm sure we could go on for days. We could, if I had the extra money, I could pull the documents out of the banking system and expose the corruption and the fraud and draw the links and, put the dots on and draw the line for you on all this. And I'm sure the FBI has more access to documents than I would be able to grab. And I'm pretty sure that, the skunk is in the wood pile and his name is Trump. And these documents will expose him for what he is. So you, the U.S. citizens, you should be doing your civic duty and forcing these to come to light. And Trump is a tainted agent of your government where he can be bought, sold, extorted, and you should be cautious on any of his dealings. And that is only going to accumulate into more violence in the streets and militias orchestrated by Trump, because he has to hold power or face the music, and he isn't going to face the music, folks. And you can see it because he won't release the Epstein files. So you got a problem down there, U.S. You got a problem. Wake up.
So if I can add some more about this Loomer character, she says confronting Islam is a key part of her brand, referring to herself as a proud Islamophobe.
Holy
and citing
shit.
that violence acts, whatever, so if you said that you were an anti-Zionist, a Jewish phobe, you'd probably be charged, perhaps go
Charged
to
and
jail.
in jail. Yeah. Oh shit.
Yeah. They call it rising anti-Semitism. Well, the reason you have rising anti-Semitism, if it is in fact the case, it's because you have these people that are Islamophobes stoking the fires.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't even like this is. I don't even know how to talk about this religious zealot retards as far as I'm concerned. What's going on? I mean, it's gone past the. I mean, science is being set back by these people. They're afraid of vaccines. They're afraid of this and that, and they're trying to impose their will on the rest of the world. And I don't know how you deal with it, but U.S., you got a real problem down there, and please keep it in your borders. Please build a wall between Canada and the U.S. Please, please, Trump, build that wall you promised. Hell, we'll even provide shovels and laborers free of charge. Just come on up here, build that wall.
No, they need Mexicans for that.
Well, they'll never do it. But yeah, like, it's ridiculous. I don't want any dealings with the U.S. It every day is getting worse and worse and worse. Prove to us, the rest of the world, that you don't endorse felons and pedophilia and religious zealots and warmongering and, rioting in the streets and bashing of your citizens for speaking out. Like, show us something. Isn't the state of Missouri the show me state? Well, show us what the hell you're all about. Oh, you are. You're showing us clearly that you're backing a felon. So, and money runs the roost down there.
So now that I have you on the line, Corey, what do you think of the peace talks in Alaska?
Oh yeah, that was had nothing to do with peace talks. That was Putin instructing Trump of what he's going to do as his puppet in the U.S. And that was nothing but a joke. But we won't go into it in this podcast. Let's have another podcast on that. I know you're baiting me because you want me to make some good statements, but I will. I mean, I'm not holding back any punches there. I think Putin should have been arrested the minute he stepped on U.S. soil. And probably Trump should have been impeached the minute he allowed a Russian leader on the U.S. soil. If it was Biden doing that, Biden would have been impeached. So I'll leave it at that. We'll do it in another episode. There's going to be lots to come on that one. Tomorrow, Zelensky is going to be ambushed by Trump at the White House. And I think Zelensky's got big enough balls. He knows how to deal with the little hand puppet there.
I think he's going to be taken into the back room to be spanked this time.
I don't think so.
I don't think
Macron
it'll be a public display.
Will have already put roadblocks up to that. Zelensky's just doing the public display that we are amicable to peace, but we're not bowing down to anybody. I mean, let's face it. The U.S. is a joke under Trump. It's a joke that he's going to try to push Zelensky into peace agreements, and Trump is not supplying any weapons or defense mechanisms for Ukraine. He's been told by Putin that you stay the fuck out of the way, and we'll try to run through Ukraine as fast as possible. And once we get all the territories, then we'll talk about reassigning Ukraine and everything else. So Trump is just a Putin agent, and you'll see it in the next week, or I'll have to come on a podcast and apologize, saying he's done, supplied Patriot missile systems to protect kids and women from being bombed by Russia. He's doing his best to ensure that democracy is valued in the world and protecting democracy in Ukraine and Europe. I can't see that happening. Putin's laid the law down to him. Don't give any aid and weapons to Ukraine. Prove me wrong, Trump.
Well.
Let's do another episode on it.
Come on, Corey.
We're doing Epstein. So
come on, Corey.
No, we're good. I'm going to get in an argument with you because you like the NATO punchline of Putin. Yeah, you just sent me an article on it, and it has nothing to do with that. I'll throw this back at you in our other podcast. You said Cuba had no choice because the U.S. was invading it to cut a deal with Russia to get nukes on its soil to protect its sovereignty. And now that Russia invaded Ukraine, yes, Ukraine does need to seek alliances to ensure its sovereignty. And I'll leave you at that.
I'm pretty
So,
sure I didn't say they had no choice, but I did say, look
well,
what
you
happened.
implied it. You implied it. So
It's,
anyway,
but look what
that's where
happened.
we're at. That's where we're at. But we'll do another podcast, folks. We don't always agree on semantics. We both agree that Ukraine is getting the shit end of the deal, but we look at it from different viewpoints. And I do a lot more research on that, just like I don't know the same details as Gaza. That's Cal knows more details. I just have what I've researched before the podcast. So I have been following the Ukraine war for 10, 12 years now, and I'm more up on it. I follow it every day, so I do stay up on it. You want a good guy to follow is that Dennis Danisoff on YouTube. So follow it, Robert. You don't follow him.
No, but one of the problems is if you have an emotional interest in anything.
I don't have an emotional interest in it. I don't like the destruction of democracy by a tyrant. I'll throw it out there right now. Why was the war after Trump didn't get his second presidency and Trump goes around? I could have prevented that war. Well, actually, I do believe Trump always has partial truth to his statements. And because Trump controlled the Senate and the House, I do believe he did send a message to Putin. Yeah, go ahead and try to take over all Ukraine, because the U.S. will not supply any weapons or aid to preventing you from taking over Ukraine. And that is what is implied by Trump on his statements. And I wouldn't be surprised if he had conversation with Putin. Go ahead. I will make sure the Republicans in the Senate and House block any Biden bills. And lo and behold, all the Biden aid was always blocked. And the Senate also blocked the use of long-range weapons to defend Ukraine and impose those blockades on other European countries. So yes, is there a tie? Well, if the Epstein files are related back to Russia financial deals and Trump is a agent of Putin, yes, there might be a tie, and history will tell us that. Right now, it's only conjecture and guesses, and my guess is, yes, there was a tie. And I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but the writing's on the wall. So we'll leave it at that. Adios. Bye.